Have you ever seen parents threaten to kick out their own son over a DNA test? Because this family did. A father found his wife's journals. A man's name kept showing up again and again. That night, he slammed the journal on the table and said, "We're getting a DNA test, and if you're not my son, you're out." But here's the twist. They were ready to disown the wrong child, and the real heir was the one they tried to throw away. Stay until the end, because this story doesn't just hurt, it exposes everything. Ethan grew up in a house where everyone had an unspoken role. His older brother, Ryan, was the golden child, and Ethan was the other one. That sounds simple, but when you grow up as the other one, you know how heavy that really feels. If Ryan failed a class, their parents said he was stressed and needed a break. If Ethan got good grades, they told him not to get full of himself. If Ryan broke something, it was just an accident. If Ethan dropped a glass, suddenly he was careless and irresponsible. Kids do not need anyone to explain that kind of thing. They just have to live in it long enough, and they understand. And Ethan understood very early. In that house, he was not the chosen one. But the thing is, Ethan was not jealous of Ryan. Not really. He only wanted one very basic thing: to feel like he actually belonged there. That should not have been too much to ask. But somehow, it always was. Ryan knew exactly where he stood in the family, and he used it every chance he got. He would take Ethan's things, start arguments, then run to their parents first, say little things that were sharp enough to hurt, but small enough that their parents could pretend not to notice. And somehow, every single time, Ethan was the one who had to apologize. Now, this family was not billionaire rich, but they were comfortable. Very comfortable. Ethan's grandfather had built a construction supply company that was big enough for the whole town to know its name. The kind of company that could support a family for generations, if nobody ruined it. Before he died, the grandfather put the company, the house, and most of the family assets into a trust. And in that trust, he made one thing very clear. Only biological grandchildren had a claim. Not adopted children, not stepchildren, not the favorite child, blood relatives. That was it. He never fully explained why, but the people who knew him understood. He never completely trusted Ethan's mother. No proof, just suspicion. And sometimes, suspicion is enough for an old man to write his will very carefully before he dies. Ryan grew up absolutely sure the company would be his one day. And why wouldn't he? Their father took him to the office, introduced him to business partners, talked to him about leadership, money, responsibility, and legacy. Ethan heard those conversations from the hallway, but he was never invited in. Everything changed on a completely normal weekend afternoon. Ethan's father was cleaning out the garage. Old boxes nobody had touched in years, old papers, family photos, holiday decorations. And then, a stack of journals. They belonged to his wife. At first, maybe he was just curious. Maybe he expected random notes, grocery lists, boring family memories. Nothing serious. Then he saw a name. A man's name, not his. He turned a few more pages. The name appeared again, and again. The journals talked about secret meetings, guilt, a relationship that had gone on for years. And then came the part that blew everything apart. The dates matched the time Ethan was conceived. That was all it took. That night, the whole family gathered in the living room. His father placed the journal on the table. His mother started crying, but she did not really explain anything. And Ryan looked happy, not confused, not worried, actually happy. Then Ethan's father looked him right in the eye and said, "We're getting a DNA test. If you're not my son, you're leaving this house." The way he said it was not wild or emotional. That was the scary part. It was calm, like the decision had already been made, and the journal only gave him permission to say it out loud. That was the moment Ethan understood. Something truly awful. His place in the family had always been conditional. He just had not known the condition until now. The next few days were unbearable. Ryan did not even bother pretending anymore. When he walked past Ethan's room, he said, "Better start packing." When Ethan opened the fridge, Ryan said, "Don't get too comfortable. You might not be eating here much longer." One morning, Ryan leaned against the kitchen counter and said, "So what do we call you after the results come back?" "Guest," Ethan told his mother. He still believed she would protect him. She looked at him, exhausted, and said, "Please don't make this harder than it already is." Not, "Ryan, stop." Not, "You don't deserve to be treated like this." Just, "Don't make this harder." That night, Ethan texted his best friend's father. He did not tell him the whole story. He just asked if he could stay with them for a while if he needed to. The reply came almost immediately. "Of course. Come over anytime." One sentence from someone else's father felt warmer than anything Ethan had heard in his own home that entire week. On the day of the DNA test, all four of them got in the car. No music, no small talk. Ryan sat in the front seat, glancing back every now and then, with the kind of smile people wear when they think they have already won. Ethan sat in the back, gripping his phone, and he kept thinking, what if they are right? What if I am not his son? Where would I go? What happens to school? What happens to my life? But underneath all of that fear was an even worse thought. No matter what the results say, how am I supposed to forget that they were willing to do this to me? They took the test, went home, and waited. In the car, Ryan said, "We don't need to wait a few days. Everybody already knows." Nobody told him to shut up. That night, Ethan placed a small bag near his bedroom door, not because he wanted to leave, because he had decided he would not be caught off guard again. 3 days later, the envelope arrived. The family gathered in the living room again. Same room, same tension, only this time, there were results. Ethan's father opened the envelope. He read the first page. His face changed. He read the second page. His hands started shaking. Ryan noticed. "What?" he said. "What does it say?" No one answered. Ethan's father looked up, at Ethan, then at Ryan, then back down at the paper, as if reading it again might change what it said. Then he finally said, "Ethan is my biological son." Ethan could breathe again. But before he could even process that, Ryan laughed. "So what?" Ryan said. "I told you he could be yours." Their father did not laugh. He looked at Ryan and said, "You are not." Ryan blinked. "What?" Their mother broke down crying. Their father's voice sounded empty. "Ryan is not my biological son." And just like that, the golden child lost the one thing his whole identity had been built on. Blood, the thing they were ready to use against Ethan, did not belong to Ryan. Ryan lost it. He said the results were wrong. He said the lab made a mistake. He said Ethan must have done something. But people who have been protected their whole lives usually do not handle consequences very well. For the first time in his life, Ryan could not run to his parents and have them fix everything, because they were staring at the same paper he was. In the weeks after that, Ethan's parents suddenly wanted family dinners. They asked about school. They cooked his favorite meals. They spoke to him gently, carefully, like he was made of glass. But Ethan knew what it was. It was not healing, it was fear. Because Ethan had just turned 18, and the lawyers connected to his grandfather's trust had already reached out. The house, the company, the inheritance, all of it was tied to biological grandchildren. Ethan had rights. Ryan had nothing. One day, Ethan's father came to him alone. He cried. He said, "I'm sorry, I was wrong. I'll make it up to you." Ethan looked at him for a long time. Then he asked the question nobody wanted to hear. If the results had gone the other way, would you still be sorry? Nobody said anything. Not his father, not his mother. And that silence was the answer. One night, Ryan screamed, "I'm the one they loved for 20 years. And Ethan simply said, "Exactly, that's the problem." That family did not love based on character. They did not love based on kindness. They loved based on status. And once the status changed, everything changed with it. In the end, Ethan moved out. Not because they kicked him out, because he chose to leave, and there is power in that difference. He rented a small apartment near his college. Nothing fancy, nothing impressive. But it was quiet, and for Ethan, quiet felt like freedom. He started studying business. He began working part-time at his grandfather's company, not under his father, but with an older manager who had known his grandfather from the beginning. For the first time, Ethan was learning about the company, not as the unwanted son listening from the hallway, but as someone with an actual future. His parents kept asking for family therapy, family dinners, words like healing, forgiveness, moving forward. And every time, Ethan asked the same question. If I wasn't the heir, would you still want to fix this? They never answered. Ethan did not destroy that family. They had done that long before the journals were ever found. He just survived long enough to stop carrying the blame for them. There is one comment about this story that I cannot stop thinking about. They are not sorry they hurt Ethan. They are sorry Ethan ended up with the power. And honestly, that is the whole story right there. Because this was never really about DNA. It was about conditional love. A family should not need a test result to decide whether a child matters. And if someone only starts treating you with kindness after they realize you have power, that is not love, that is fear. So now I want to ask you, should Ethan ever forgive them? Or should he keep his distance after seeing exactly what they were willing to do? Comment "I was Ethan" if this story hit close to home. And if you like stories about toxic families, betrayal, favoritism, and karma showing up at the worst possible time, subscribe for the next story. Because next time, a quiet grandson is told to leave his grandfather's funeral dinner just 5 minutes before the will is read. His family thinks the golden child is about to inherit everything, but then the attorney walks in, holding a sealed envelope from the safe. And before sunset, that family learns one brutal truth. The grandfather had been watching all along, and the son they ignored was never as invisible as they thought.